putting a plan in place to actually take my life. But something told me that I needed to go talk to the chaplain.
I was working in the office, my door was closed. And then I heard a knock on the door. Aaron came in and he looked distraught.
And I said, these are my problems. And I remember him telling me, none of that's your problem. It's like sin is your problem. And at that moment, Billy shared the gospel with me. That was a Wednesday when I met with Chaplain Billy. Friday of that week, I was still struggling, having a really hard time. I was getting ready to leave work for the day, and I had determined that was the day that I was going to kill myself. And Chaplain Billy showed up in my office right before I left, probably within like 5 minutes to spare. If he didn't come within 5 minutes, I was taking my life. And it would have been done.
I wanted to put action behind those words. I told him that I loved him and I saw great value in him. How can you show great value? How do you put action behind words that you love someone when you don't show up?
And I didn't tell him what I was planning on doing. But he said, he wanted me to come to church that Sunday with he and his family. That Sunday, everything that the preacher was saying spoke right to me. I asked Billy, I said, pretty sure I need one of these Bibles. And I remember he just took his Bible, he just gave it to me. And I have it to this day. It means more to me than most people can imagine. While reading John chapter 1, the Lord opened my eyes and saved me. I went down to see Billy, and I'm explaining to him what happened. I was like, something has changed. Something changed. He just stood up, gave me a hug. He said, man, this is great, brother. I mean, he was ecstatic for me.
For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to those who are being saved, it is the power of God. Those 16 years, God has placed me here in the mission field just for Aaron. It's all worth it.
Because he shared the gospel with me, brought me to that church, and gave me a Bible, the Lord used that as the means by which I would be saved. And it's been an incredible journey. I'm married. We have a daughter coming in 4 months. I can see in hindsight that it was all for my good and His glory. So many people are without hope in the military, and they need faithful chaplains that will not shy away from the gospel, and will not shy away from proclaiming Christ and what He did.
That's ministry of presence. We don't know where people are at. We don't know what they're carrying. We don't know the weight of that. We don't know how muddy their boots are. But part of their calling is us willing to get our boots muddy too.
Okay. That's the chaplaincy. A ministry of presence. My calling, I grew up in the church. I've only known the church. And I accepted Christ as my Savior and Lord as an 11-year-old. And shortly thereafter, I got very involved. Youth director took us under their wings, and my pastor saw something special that maybe God's calling. And I loved talking to the pastor. My pastor was my hero of my community. Can you imagine that in your community, the most prestigious person, the one that you want to hear truth and words from, and advice and wisdom on life, is the pastor. That's where I was. At age 14, I surrendered. I guess that's a good term. I felt called into the ministry at 14. Let's kind of move that forward. Shortly after that, one of our deacon's sons came to speak. He was wearing uniform. It was an Air Force uniform. It was a uniform. I go, wow. And he got up and he preached the gospel with passion. And I thought, wow, to put the role of a pastor in uniform in the armed services, I was sold. And I won't go through all of the details of my life, but I had an ROTC commitment out of college, and I watched the chaplain as much as I watched any soldier. As a young commander, I lost my first soldier in an accident, and watched the chaplain as he spoke those words of comfort to my unit, and I said, "Oh, that's what I've got." And so many times soldiers would come to me with their issues, and they were on their way to jail or court-martial, and I wanted to tell them that their real problem was they didn't know Jesus, and I could still do that as a commander under the First Amendment. If you know the thing about I have found in the military, you can talk to an individual about religion and faith as far as they want to go. Now, if they're uncomfortable, like don't want to hear it, that's the end of it. But I thought I would have more freedom as a chaplain, and so I pastored for a little while as a civilian pastor. So I've done that, and then I went into the Army chaplaincy, sent out by my local church, and that's the rest of the story. 30 years as a military chaplain, and about 8 years in uniform, knowing the culture of the military. And I will tell you, it's a unique calling. It is a calling to ministry. It is a unique calling. It's a specialized calling. And I will also tell you, not everyone's called to the chaplaincy. And I'm going to go through a few slides. I don't want to just bore you with a bunch of slides, and I'll be glad to leave these. But as you're thinking about the chaplaincy, this is a discernment morning. My first thought to you would be, first of all, where are you in your faith? That's where it begins. And from a Christian worldview, Jesus Christ is the way, truth, life. No man comes to the Father but by Him. You got to get that one down quickly before you become a chaplain. We're not free agents. Anything goes. No. And then secondly, to discern this calling. First of all, calling to ministry, but it is going to be ministry. It is not a calling to be a spiritual life coach. It is not a calling to be a cheerleader. It's a calling as a religious leader. I say pastor in uniform. That's what this calling is. It's a life calling. I still feel that on me. I mean, when I'm around y'all, I'm ready to, hey, pick me, Lord. Send me back in. I'll go. I'm ready. I'm ready to give the military a few more years. But anyway, it is a great people group. The military, the armed services, the most unreached people group in the United States. Unreached. What do I mean by that? So many of our young people have never held a sacred scripture in their hand. They've never owned one of these until we give it to this 18 to 24-year-old in basic training. You know, in a Christian country, and yet they've never held. What's happened? I'll tell you what is happening. These young 18 to 24-year-olds, that's our target group as far as our troops. They are hungry for spiritual things. They're hungry for the truth. They're hungry for relevancy. How does it work? They're hungry to see people who actually are living it. They're hungry for fellowship. Does that not sound like congregational community setting? They're hungry for the truth. And I'll give you just one quick example. Fort Jackson is one of our largest basic training bases in the United States. We have a chaplain there every 11 weeks. That's how long basic training is. Every 11 weeks. He is baptizing, believers' baptism of about 70 soldiers. Every 11 weeks, like clockwork, average of these individuals who have met Jesus Christ for the first time in their life. They've been baptized, and then we disciple them, and then they are sent out. So in some respects, what the chaplaincy is like, it's like mobile ministry. You're sending missionaries all over the world in this family, military family that's multicultural, multi-generational, multi-ethnic. Like Acts chapter 2, folks, you have that opportunity. So I hope that you just seal the deal and say yes to the Lord if you've been called into the armed services. It is a great life, great ministry. Now, let me see if I can go through some of these. And again, I'm gonna throw some seed points out for you. A chaplain is called by God, and you're sent out outside the walls of the church. There's so much ministry outside the walls of the church. Yes, inside as well. But there's a lot of ministry outside the walls, and that's where you're called. Chaplaincy in general can be vocational, paid, or you volunteer. Of those 3,700 chaplains that I have an opportunity to serve, some of them are paid, some are not. We have them in every institutional setting that you can think of. For example, correctional and jails. We have them in hospitals. We have them in corporate Fortune 500 companies. We have them with first responders. By the way, first responders, EMTs, highest rate of suicide among any first responders, EMTs. Chaplaincy, at least in the armed services, requires ordination. Sometimes I was licensed to preach when I was going through the process, and then I was ordained. Let me keep moving. What do? I just threw some seed points out. Look, you don't lose your faith or leave it at the door when you become a chaplain. Under the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, you have the freedom to exercise your faith, beliefs, and practices. You can talk to anyone about your faith, beliefs, and practices as you get engaged in that sacred story, those conversations that I guarantee you're going to have. And it also expands your worldview. It's not just about you, few, and no other. You have the requirement, like this brother does, as a result of being the garrison chaplain at Fort Buchanan, to ensure a comprehensive, continuous religious support program for everyone, whether they're Jewish or whether they're Hindu or whether they're Muslim or whether they're Christian, to ensure that everyone has that opportunity. You sort of manage that. Doesn't mean that you have to become a Muslim. It just means that you are as concerned about the Muslim getting their Quran as you are about Christians having their Bible. First Amendment, love it. Visionary spiritual leadership. And only the Lord can give that to you. It's a pluralistic environment. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. And yeah, you equip others for ministry. There's a few others that you can look at. A lot of stuff on religious liberty. Hey, I'm working an issue right now with a religious liberty lawyer. Last night, I'm looking at an amicus brief for a case that's going to court against Virginia. Virginia is wanting to stop tuition assistance for individuals pursuing a religion degree or a practical theology degree. Can you believe that? And Virginia has, I think, the oldest chaplaincy program of them all. And yet, that state right now is saying, no, we're not going to support chaplain candidates or seminary students with money. So be interested to see how that one goes. So just a brief history. This is, again, one of those stories that gets more colorful every time you talk about it. But there was an infantryman in France. He was doing his thing. Maybe he was on a horse. Maybe he wasn't. Don't know. He saw a beggar on the road. Some people say it was a wounded soldier. Don't know exactly. But he saw this person in need. Some say it was in the snow. Some say it was in the heat of France. I don't know. But he saw a need. And he took off his cloak, which was a symbol of his rank, if you will, and his authority. He ripped that cloak, or took part of it off, and covered this beggar in an act of compassion. Matthew chapter 25, if you will. And we get this word, the keeper of the cloak, the capellani. And now you get chapelains, chapel, all came from there, from this St. Martin of Tours. 300 AD. So, again, this is history. I love history. Just a reminder from this one. General George Washington, the Continental Army. As America was sort of separating from Great Britain, establishing our own freedom, the Continental Army stood up. And of all the things that Washington was concerned about was, we need to ensure that our troops have an opportunity to recognize that God's in charge. And we need to ensure that we try to conduct ourselves not as barbarians in uniform, but that we have a moral and an ethical conscience. And he saw the need for chaplains. 1775, 251 years and going strong. Here's here's a picture, again, was Washington actually there? This is at Valley Forge. I don't think it was that nice looking over there. It was brutal. I mentioned that yesterday in the at Fort Buchanan during the message. Some of them were barefoot. There were women and children at Valley Forge. You may not know that. They had homes built out of corn stalks. I mean, can you imagine the warmth that you would have in a cold, dismal, swampy, wintry, just north of Philadelphia in December? There we go. And here's this is Chaplain John Hurt praying over the troops. Then we had the First Amendment to the Constitution, which is chaplains should be able to quote this. And by the way, we used to have our chaplain carry a copy of the Constitution, and the one that's most sacred is the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And you will be engaged in the weeds on this with our troops, as sometimes their freedom, at least in their opinion, may be violated. We had a big thing a few weeks ago. The government, Department of War is changing beards of how you wear them, and something about the length of your sideburns had to be like 1 inch off your jawbone. And the Jewish population would say, wait a second, we're Orthodox Jews, it has to be only 1/4 of an inch off. And all these discussions, and the chaplain's involved, because it's a religious liberty issue. And by the way, the government conceded prior to a Supreme Court decision that they were going to honor and provide religious accommodation for the length of the sideburns. Anyway, let me keep going. This is a code in Congress that basically, what you need to hear about this, it is what pays for the chaplaincy. It's the law. And notice what it says about every chaplain. And I want every chaplain to hear this here too. Every chaplain is required to hold one religious service a week. You say, well, I'm not on the preaching rotation this Sunday. Well, you better figure it out. There are other things you can do besides just a Sunday morning service at 9 or 10. And I'm not going to tell you how to do that, but you need to figure that out because that's how you're paid. There are some who say this is no longer valid, applicable in our enlightened age. What's the big deal about religious services? That's another discussion that I'm not going to have with you today. You got the recruiters here that can talk to you. But notice what it says. Chaplains are religious leaders. Here's the policy. Here's the two things we do. We provide for free exercise and we advise the command. The person that's responsible for religious practice within the context of a unit, the Puerto Rican National Guard, is the Joint Force Headquarters Commander, whoever that is, or the Garrison Commander. Chaplains are there to advise and assist to ensure that it's going properly, but the commander, all the weight of the free exercise of religion is on the shoulders of those who are in authority. Just for your information. This talks about all that they have to do, commanders. And this is why we need to pray for those in authority, that it may go well with us, and that we may lead quiet, peaceful lives within the context of our units and not have toxic leaders or any kind of leader. I'm not going to mention types of leaders. Anyway, look at all that. That's what we do. All right, let's kind of bring this home. This is an old chart, a couple of years old, 2024, I believe I got these stats. But what I want you to see is the diversity. The rise that you're going to see is in the no denominational, we call this the rise of the nuns, non-Catholic, the no religious preference. I don't know if it's because the younger generation is suspicious of denominations. The age of denominations is, I have no clue, but we're seeing a lot of those. And we're also seeing many who, I have no clue, never been in a church. I don't know what they do in that building, or what they do in that warehouse, or wherever you meet. But that's a challenge. Now look next also at, here's your mission field. The average age of our troops is going up, by the way. That's our average age, 29.9. And when I came in the Army in 1973, and I remember being told, hey, if the Army wanted you to have a family, they would have issued you one. They had no time for spouses and children. Well, that has changed. And thank God. Amen. But there you go. Minority race groups, that's also an increase. Now, let me talk for just a moment. I want you to hear this term. When you become a chaplain, you do ministry within the context of a total institution. Say that in Spanish, total institution. What would that be? Yeah. In the context of a total institution ministry, everything is self-contained. We don't need no help from anybody. Give you an example. We had the USS George, the Ford Striker Group out in near the Hormuz Straits. They are a self-contained outfit and can operate without any logistical support for months. That's kind of how the military is. We got the whole full range of it. You don't have to go off base to have religious resources. Technically, I guess if we need a rabbi, you have a way of finding a rabbi and contracting a rabbi or sending him to the closest rabbi for high holy days. If you don't know, you will know soon. That'll come up anyway. It's interesting in this total institution. It's not like, hey, I go to church at this zip code, this geographical location once a week, and then I don't see them again for a week. No, in the military, you live next door to those you work and serve with and minister to. Work, sleep, play. Some people don't want this, and especially the third building. Yeah, there's bureaucracy. The military, for whatever reason, loves regulations and policies and directives, and you have to study and know those things. Organizational charts, oh my goodness. And, where do chaplains fit? Well, you have rank without command, and right now there's a discussion about taking the rank off. And I believe the Secretary hates that his intent is, hey, I want people to see pastor, priest, rabbi, chaplain. I want to see that religious leaders, not so much what rank they're wearing. Thought is, sometimes the rank gets in the way. We could also discuss that one, but that's not my lane today. So anyway, but you're in the middle of the heart. You have no command. And here's another one. Troops are insiders, and families are outsiders. What do I mean by that? Now, in a local church setting, Pastor Luis, I'm sure that your family, they expect you and your wife to kind of be together and the children. And y'all are both, your family's insider. Not in the military. I'll give you an example. When I was in Washington, D.C. serving in the Pentagon, we had a plan that if there was a massive event that took place, that we would have a place to go to for safety as far as the Army staff. Someplace near Washington, D.C. And I had to practice going to that place and where it was and seeing where I would be working. You know what was missing in that plan? My wife was living at Fort Belvoir and was on her own. I would take off and I would go on a bus with a bunch of troops. My wife, she'd have to fend for herself. Now that's kind of an, I hope you don't mind. I hope you don't hear that as heartless, but it's some of those things. Some of your spouses may work in the special community. In many cases, Fort Bragg, special ops, those who are ready brigades may not know where they're going until they get on a plane and they're flying towards it. And their spouse and children have no clue where they are and how long they're gone. It's that insider-outsider that's it's tough. I love that last quote. It's a family deal. Some of you in uniform, I don't know all your life story, but I'm your brother in Christ. I'm your brother forever, whether you like it or not.